core compression, standing hip flexion with leg extension. This is a challenging little movement in terms of balance and in terms of building active strength in hip flexion. You would use this movement to help increase the core compression in gymnastics movements like the pike, gymnastics pancake, your L-sits and V-sits. To perform the standing hip flexion with leg extension, you're going to need to stand on one leg. If you struggle to balance, you can use a wall for support. The idea behind this exercise is to move the hip from a passive range of hip flexion into an active range of hip flexion. The passive range is when the knee is bent and you are using the arms to help assist hip flexion. The arms are taking some of the weight of the leg and lifting the hip into hip flexion. When you extend the leg and remove the hands, now this is the active range of hip flexion. The hip flexor muscles are doing the work to lift the hip into hip flexion. So you start in the passive range by wrapping the hands around the knee and pulling the thigh as close to the torso as you can. In this passive range of hip flexion, you want to try to engage the hip flexors. Try to feel tension in these muscles before you take the hands away from the leg and you start to extend the leg. As you extend the leg, the hip flexor muscles are going to have to try and hold the hip into hip flexion. So this is the active range of motion. When you extend the leg, hold the leg straight for the prescribed amount of time before bending the knee, grasping the knee with the hands, and moving back into the passive range of hip flexion. A slight bend in the supporting leg can help with balance, but we want to be careful not to bend the knee too much because this will change the angle of the torso and give us a false impression of hip flexion. As the torso leans back, the height of the leg lift will seem to increase, but the angle of hip flexion won't. So try to maintain only a slight bend in the supporting leg and focus more on the active range of hip flexion. Perform the specified number of repetitions on one leg and then switch to the opposite side. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel as this encourages me to keep posting great content.